The phone call came at midnight, shattering the silence of my small apartment like a gunshot. My mother's voice, sharp and venomous, hissed through the line, "You're a disgrace, Emily, abandoning your own blood." By morning, I'd learned they weren't just angry, they were plotting to take everything I'd built. I was 35, a single woman who'd clawed her way up from nothing to own a modest graphic design business in Seattle. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine every late night, every client won, every dollar saved. My younger brother, Jake, was 30, perpetually unemployed, and a master at burning bridges. For years, my parents had bailed him out rent, car payments, even his gambling debts. They saw him as their golden boy, despite his endless failures. Me, I was the practical one, the one who owed the family because I dared to succeed. That night, Mom demanded I pay off Jake's latest mess, a $20,000 loan he defaulted on after a failed business venture selling knockoff sneakers. I refused. I'd already given him thousands over the years, money he never repaid. "He's your brother," she screamed, as if love could erase his irresponsibility. I hung up, my hands trembling, unaware that this was only the beginning. The next morning, I found an email from my bank, suspicious activity on my savings account. Someone had tried to transfer $15,000, nearly my entire emergency fund to an unfamiliar account. My heart sank as I traced the IP address to my parents' home. They hadn't just called me a disgrace. They were trying to ruin me. I drove to their house, a quaint suburban home filled with memories of my childhood holidays, laughter, and the constant pressure to be there for Jake. When I confronted them, Mom's face twisted with indignation. "You're selfish, Emily. Jake needs this more than you." Dad, usually the quieter one, added, "We raised you. You owe us." Jake, slouched on the couch, avoided my gaze, his guilt as palpable as the stale cigarette smoke in the air. I left, shaken but resolute. I changed my bank passwords, froze my accounts, and hired a lawyer. But the betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. They weren't just taking my money, they were dismantling my trust and family. Over the next week, I discovered they'd been using my name to open credit cards for Jake, racking up debt I'd never signed for. My credit score, once pristine, was now a wreck. I sat in my apartment, staring at the legal documents piling up on my kitchen table. Each one felt like a brick in a wall, separating me from the family I'd once loved. But I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I'd fight back, not with their tactics of deceit, but with the truth and the law. I called my lawyer, Sarah, a sharp woman with a knack for unraveling fraud. "We'll hit them where it hurts," she said, her voice steady. "They'll regret crossing you." As I prepared for the legal battle, I couldn't shake the memories of better times, Mom teaching me to bake, Dad cheering at my high school art shows. How had it come to this? The answer lay in their blind devotion to Jake, a devotion that had warped their sense of right and wrong. I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for my dignity, for the life I'd built against their expectations. By the end of the week, Sarah had uncovered more. My parents had forged my signature on a loan application, using their house as collateral to fund Jake's latest scheme. If they defaulted, they'd lose everything. Part of me wanted to let them drown in their own mess. But another part, the part that still remembered family dinners and shared laughter, hesitated. Could I save myself without destroying them? I stood at a crossroads, torn between justice and mercy. But one thing was clear, I wasn't the disgrace they'd called me. They'd underestimated me, and that was their first mistake. The lawyer's office smelled of coffee and old books, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my life. Sarah laid out the evidence, forged signatures, unauthorized transactions, and a paper trail leading straight to my parents' doorstep. "We can sue for fraud and identity theft," she said, her eyes glinting with determination. "But it'll get ugly. Are you ready for that, Emily?" I wasn't sure. The thought of dragging my family through court felt like betraying them, even after everything they'd done. But as I sat there, clutching a photo of my parents from happier times, I realized they'd already betrayed me. I nodded. Do it. The next few days were a blur of depositions and legal jargon. Sarah filed a lawsuit against my parents and Jake, seeking damages for the financial chaos they'd caused. I spent hours combing through bank statements, piecing together their scheme. They'd been siphoning money from my accounts for months. Small amounts at first, then bolder moves as their desperation grew. Jake's gambling debts had spiraled, and my parents, unwilling to let him face the consequences, had turned to me as their personal ATM. One evening, I got a call from Jake. His voice was slurred, likely from the cheap whiskey he favored. You gotta drop this," he pleaded. "You're tearing the family apart." I laughed bitterly. "Me? You're the one who let Mom and Dad ruin themselves for you." He hung up, but his words lingered, gnawing at my resolve. Was I the one tearing us apart? Or was I just refusing to be their doormat? The first court date loomed, and I felt like I was walking into a storm. My parents sat across the courtroom, their faces a mix of defiance and shame. Jake wasn't there, he'd skipped town, leaving Mom and Dad to face the music alone. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, listened as Sarah presented our case: the forged loan, the stolen savings, the credit cards in my name. My parents' lawyer argued they'd acted out of familial duty, claiming I'd abandoned Jake in his time of need. The audacity of it made my blood boil. After the hearing, Mom cornered me in the hallway. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered, tears in her eyes. "We're your family." I wanted to scream, to shake her and ask why she'd chosen Jake over me. But I just walked away. Her tears didn't erase the fact that they'd tried to steal my future. Back home, I found an old letter from Dad, written when I graduated college. "You're our rock, Emily," he'd said. "We're so proud." The words felt like a cruel joke now. I tucked the letter away, unable to throw it out, but unwilling to let it soften me. Sarah called with an update. The bank had frozen my parents' accounts pending the investigation. They were scrambling, their financial house of cards collapsing. I started getting texts from extended family cousins, aunts, even my grandmother calling me heartless, saying I was destroying my parents. The guilt was suffocating, but I reminded myself I hadn't forged signatures. I hadn't lied. I hadn't stolen. Still, the weight of their judgment pressed down, making me question if I was the villain in their story. As the legal battle intensified, I leaned on my best friend, Mia, a no-nonsense barista who'd seen me through every crisis. "They made their bed, she said one night over wine. "You're not the bad guy for refusing to lie in it." Her words grounded me, but the pain of losing my family, however flawed they were, lingered like a bruise. By the end of the second week, Sarah uncovered a bombshell. My parents had planned to sell their house and funnel the money to Jake, using my stolen funds as a down payment for his fresh start. The betrayal cut deeper than ever. They weren't just stealing from Methy, were erasing me from their lives. All for him. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker. Every glance between me and my parents charged with unspoken accusations. Sarah presented new evidence, emails between Mom and Jake, detailing their plan to borrow my money and repay it later without my consent. The judge's expression hardened as she read them, and I saw Dad shift uncomfortably in his seat. For the first time, I wondered if he was starting to see the mess they'd made. Outside the courthouse, reporters had caught wind of the story. "Local family feud turns legal." One headline read. I avoided the news, but the whispers followed, Meclians asking if I was that woman suing her parents, neighbors giving me pitying looks. Seattle felt smaller, suffocating, as my private pain became public gossip. I threw myself into work, designing logos and websites with a fervor that bordered on obsession. It was the one thing I could control. One night, Mia dragged me to a local art gallery to get out of my head. Surrounded by vibrant paintings, I felt a flicker of the old Emily, the one who dreamed of creating, not just surviving. But the moment was fleeting. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. Emily. Family is everything." It wasn't signed, but I knew it was Jake. The threat sent a chill down my spine, but I forwarded it to Sarah. "He's desperate," she said. "That's good for us." The next court date revealed more cracks in my parents' facade. Their lawyer tried to paint me as a greedy daughter, hoarding my wealth while my brother struggled. But Sarah was relentless, showing how Jake had squandered every chance I'd given him. $5,000 for a tech startup that never materialized. $3,000 for a car he crashed. Countless smaller loans. The judge wasn't swayed by their sob story. She ordered a forensic accountant to dig deeper into their finances, and I saw fear flash in Mom's eyes. That evening, I found a package on my doorstep, old family photos, my childhood drawings, a locket Mom gave me when I turned 16. No note, just the items, as if they were cutting me out of their lives. The locket burned in my hand, a symbol of love now tainted. I wanted to cry, to scream, but instead, I locked it in a drawer. I couldn't afford to break down, not yet. Sarah called with more news. The accountant had found irregularities in my parents' mortgage payments. They'd been funneling money to Jake's accounts, neglecting their own bills. Their house was at risk of foreclosure, and they blamed me. "If you just helped Jake," Dad said in a voicemail, his voice breaking, "none of this would have happened." I deleted it, but his words echoed in my mind, sowing doubt. Was I too harsh? Should I have given Jake one more chance? Mia sensed my turmoil and showed up with takeout and tough love. "They're manipulating you, Em," she said, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. "They chose Jake's mess over you. Don't let them guilt you into losing everything." She was right, but the ache in my chest didn't fade. Family wasn't supposed to feel like this, like a war where no one wins. As the legal proceedings dragged on, I started therapy. Dr. Patel, a kind woman with a knack for cutting through my defenses, helped me see the bigger picture. My parents' favoritism wasn't about me failing them, it was about their inability to let Jake fail. "You're not responsible for their choices," she said. Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of self-doubt. By the end of the month, the accountant's report was damning. My parents had siphoned over $30,000 from my accounts over 2 years, all to prop up Jake's lifestyle. The evidence was airtight, and Sarah was confident we'd win. But victory felt hollow. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting to reclaim my sense of self, to prove I wasn't the disgrace they'd called me. The trial was a slow burn, each day peeling back layers of deception. Sarah's cross-examination of Mom was brutal. "Did you believe Emily owed you her savings?" she asked, her tone sharp. Mom faltered, muttering about family duty, but her words rang hollow. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavy. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Outside, the world kept turning, oblivious to my crumbling family. I tried to focus on work, but clients were hesitant, spooked by the headlines. My business, my pride and joy, was taking hits. I spent nights redesigning my portfolio, hoping to salvage my reputation. But every rejection email stung, a reminder that my parents' actions had ripple effects I couldn't escape. One afternoon, I got a call from my cousin, Lisa, the only family member who hadn't shunned me. "Jake's in Vegas," she said. "He's gambling again, using Mom and Dad's credit cards." I wasn't surprised, but the news still hurt. They were drowning themselves to save him, and I was collateral damage. I thanked Lisa and hung up, my resolve hardening. I couldn't save them from themselves, but I could protect what was mine. Sarah suggested a restraining order against Jake after his threatening text. "He's unpredictable," she warned. I hesitated. Could I really cut my brother out like that? But when I found my car's tires slashed outside my apartment, I didn't need more convincing. The police couldn't prove it was Jake. But I knew. The restraining order was filed the next day. The trial took a turn when the forensic accountant testified. He detailed how my parents had used their home equity to fund Jake's debts, forging my signature to secure additional loans. The judge's face was grim as she reviewed the documents. "This is systematic fraud," she said, her voice cutting through the room. My parents' lawyer scrambled, but the evidence was overwhelming. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home mom's garden, Dad's old records, Jake and me playing in the backyard. I woke up crying, the loss sharper than ever. I wanted to hate them, but I couldn't. They were my family, flawed and broken, and part of me still loved them. Dr. Patel helped me unpack this in our next session. Love doesn't mean excusing their actions, she said. It means accepting the pain and moving forward. I started rebuilding, piece by piece. I took on freelance gigs to cover legal fees, worked late into the night, and leaned on Mia for support. She organized a survival party at her place, inviting mutual friends who rallied around me. Their kindness reminded me I wasn't alone, even if my family had turned their backs. The trial's midpoint brought a surprise. My parents offered a settlement. They'd repay half the stolen money and drop their defense, but only if I withdrew the fraud charges. Sarah was skeptical. "They're scared," she said. "We've got them cornered." I didn't want their money, I wanted accountability. But the thought of ending the public spectacle was tempting. I asked for time to think. Lisa called again, her voice heavy. "Aunt Karen's sick," she said, referring to Mom. "The stress is killing her." Guilt clawed at me, but so did anger. Was Mom's illness real, or another manipulation? I couldn't tell anymore. I met with Sarah to discuss the settlement, my mind a tangle of emotions. "Whatever you decide," she said, "make sure it's for you, not them." I spent the night staring at the locket from Mom, its weight a reminder of what I'd lost and what I still had to fight for. The settlement could end the nightmare, but it wouldn't undo the betrayal. I wasn't ready to let them off the hook. Not yet. I rejected the settlement. It wasn't about the money, it was about standing up for myself. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. "This is your line in the sand," she said. "Let's finish it." The trial resumed, and the tension was palpable. My parents' lawyer tried to shift blame, claiming I'd enabled Jake by loaning him money in the past. Sarah dismantled their argument, showing how I'd been coerced by family pressure, not greed. The courtroom drama wasn't the only battle. My business was struggling, with clients pulling away due to the negative publicity. I spent hours cold calling new leads, pitching designs with a confidence I didn't feel. One night, a potential client at a local bookstore loved my work and signed a contract for a full rebrand. It was a small victory, but it felt like a lifeline. I could still build something, even amidst the wreckage. Jake resurfaced, sending a drunken voicemail begging for forgiveness. "I didn't mean for this. He slurred. "I'll fix it." I didn't believe him. His promises were as empty as the bottles he left behind. I forwarded the message to Sarah, who added it to the evidence pile. "He's digging his own grave," she said. I wished it didn't hurt to hear. The trial's turning point came when Dad took the stand. He looked older, frilier, his hands trembling as he spoke. "We just wanted to help Jake," he said, his voice cracking. "Emily's always been fine on her own." The words stung more than I expected. I'd spent my life proving I could survive without their support, but hearing it weaponized against me was a gut punch. Sarah's cross-examination was merciless, forcing him to admit they'd known the loans were fraudulent. The courtroom was silent, the truth laid bare. After the hearing, I found Mom crying in the parking lot. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she sobbed. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence said otherwise. "You chose him over me," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. She had no response, and I walked away, the distance between us growing with every step. Therapy with Dr. Patel became my anchor. She helped me see that my parents' actions weren't about my worth, they were about their own failures. You're not responsible for fixing them, she said. I started journaling, pouring out my anger and grief. It was messy, raw, but it helped me reclaim my voice. Mia organized a weekend getaway to the coast. Just the two of us, standing on the rocky shore, the wind whipping my hair. I felt a flicker of hope. The ocean was vast, unyielding, a reminder that life went on, even after betrayal. I threw a stone into the waves, imagining it carried my pain away. It didn't erase the hurt, but it lightened the load. Back in Seattle, Sarah had news. The judge was leaning in our favor. The forensic accountant's report had sealed it. My parents' financial misconduct was undeniable. They faced not only civil penalties, but potential criminal charges. The weight of it was crushing. I didn't want them in jail, but I couldn't let them walk free either. Justice wasn't supposed to feel this heavy. As the trial neared its end, I got a letter from Lisa. She'd visited Mom, who was in the hospital for stress-related heart issues. She's sorry, Emily, Lisa wrote, but she's too proud to say it. I didn't know what to feel: pity, anger, or something softer. I tucked the letter away, unsure if I'd ever respond. The trial's outcome would decide my next move. But one thing was certain: I wasn't the disgrace they'd called me. I was a fighter, and I was done apologizing for it. The judge's ruling came on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day that mirrored my mood. My parents were found liable for fraud and identity theft, ordered to repay $35,000 in damages, plus legal fees. The house they'd leveraged for Jake's debts was now under a lien, and criminal charges were pending. Sarah squeezed my hand as the gavel fell, but I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache where family should have been. After the verdict, I avoided the press, slipping out a side door to escape the cameras. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives, some supportive, others accusing me of ruining Mom and Dad. I turned it off and drove to Mia's, where she greeted me with a hug and a glass of wine. You did what you had to, she said. I nodded, but the weight of the win felt like a loss. The next week, I focused on rebuilding. The bookstore contract was a success, leading to more clients. I redesigned my website, showcasing my resilience through bold, vibrant designs. Work became my refuge, a place where I wasn't defined by my family's betrayal. But at night, alone, the memories crept in: Mom's laughter, Dad's pride, Jake's rare moments of charm. I missed them, even if they didn't deserve it. Lisa called with an update. Mom was out of the hospital, but their house was in foreclosure. Jake had vanished again, likely chasing another doomed scheme. They're lost without you, she said. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to reach out, to offer a lifeline. But Dr. Patel's words echoed. You can't fix them. I thanked Lisa and promised to think about it. The criminal case against my parents moved forward, but the prosecutor offered a plea deal, probation and restitution in exchange for no jail time. Sarah urged me to push for harsher penalties, but I hesitated. They'd lost their home, their savings, their dignity. Was that enough? I met with the prosecutor, a kind man who saw the pain in my eyes. This isn't about revenge, he said. It's about accountability. I agreed to the plea, hoping it would give them a chance to change. One evening, I found a note slipped under my door. It was from Dad, handwritten and shaky. We were wrong, Emily. We're sorry. No excuses. No blame, just an apology. I cried for the first time in weeks. The words both a balm and a wound. I didn't reply, but I kept the note, a fragile thread to a past I wasn't ready to let go. My business started to recover, thanks to a viral social media post about my designs. Clients returned, drawn to my story of resilience. I hired an assistant, a young artist named Tara, whose enthusiasm reminded me of my younger self. Together, we took on bigger projects, and I felt a spark of pride I hadn't known in months. Dr. Patel helped me navigate the guilt and grief. You're allowed to love them and still protect yourself, she said. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter, channeling my pain into helping others rebuild. It wasn't a cure, but it gave me purpose. I wasn't just surviving, I was growing. As the months passed, I heard rumors that Jake was in rehab, trying to turn his life around. I didn't know if it was true, but I hoped for his sake it was. My parents moved into a small apartment, their lives downsized but intact. I didn't reach out, but I didn't close the door either. Healing, I learned, wasn't about erasing the past, it was about choosing what to carry forward. A year after the trial, I stood in my new office, a small but bright space filled with my designs. The walls were covered in sketches, a testament to the life I'd rebuilt. My business was thriving, and I'd found a community of friends. Mia, Tara, and others would become my chosen family. But the scars of my parents' betrayal lingered, a quiet ache that surfaced in moments of stillness. One morning, I got a call from Lisa. Your mom wants to see you, she said. No pressure, but she's different now. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I agreed to meet at a neutral Spoda coffee shop near my old neighborhood. When I saw Mom, she looked smaller, her eyes heavy with regret. I failed you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I chose Jake because I thought he needed me more. I was wrong. I listened, my heart torn between forgiveness and caution. Dad joined us, his hands clasped tightly. We're trying to make it right, he said. They'd started therapy, sold what little they had left to pay restitution, and were living modestly. Jake was in rehab, they said, and showing progress. I didn't know if I could trust their words, but I saw something new in their eyes: humility. I didn't forgive them that day, but I didn't shut them out either. I need time, I told them. They nodded, respecting my boundaries for the first time. As I left, I felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because I'd reclaimed my power to choose. My therapy sessions with Dr. Patel evolved, focusing less on survival and more on growth. You're not defined by their mistakes, she said. You're defined by what you build. I took her words to heart, pouring myself into my work and my community. The women's shelter became a second home, where I mentored young women rebuilding their lives. Their resilience mirrored mine, and together, we found strength. One evening, Mia threw a party to celebrate my business's one-year anniversary. The room was filled with laughter, music, and people who believed in me. Tara unveiled a mural she'd painted for the officia vibrant tree, its branches reaching toward the sky. It's you, she said, rooted, but always growing. I hugged her, tears in my eyes, grateful for the family I'd found. I started writing again, not just journaling, but stories, fictional tales of redemption and resilience. One was published in a local literary magazine, a small victory that felt monumental. It was proof I could create something beautiful from pain. My parents sent a congratulatory note, and though I didn't respond, I kept it beside Dad's apology. Months later, I heard from Jake. He was out of rehab, working a steady job at a hardware store. I'm sorry, Em, he wrote in a letter. I'll spend my life making it up to you. I didn't reply, but I wished him well, silently. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip, it was a journey, and I was still on the road. As I stood in my office, looking at Tara's mural, I realized I'd done more than survive. I'd built a life that was mine, defined by my choices, not my family's failures. The disgrace they'd called me was their projection, not my truth. I was Emily, artist, fighter, survivor, and I was enough.